So now we're going to pick up with Shankara Troop, who's a new character for us. I'm not in the mood for Tyrone's sorry, baby, give me some loving routine, so when I see him in the hall, I storm past as if he's not even there. Eventually, he'll figure out why. I come to school sporting shades and a Johnny print across my left cheek. Johnny being the name of the idiot who smacked me last night. Naturally, Portia is the first person who notices my new tattoo. She walks straight up to me and says, "You deserve better, girlfriend, and you know it. No hello, no how are you, just you deserve better." Then she turns away and walks into the classroom. Typical Portia. No nonsense. That's why we get along. Then here comes Sheila Gambaroni. The minute she sees me, she demands to know the name of the guy who gave me my shiner, like she's going to send her brothers after him or something. I keep his name to myself, just in case. She commences to call the guy everything but a child of God, which makes her feel better, I think. Then gives me a hug and says she'll see me later. Sheila's a bit over the top with this sister act, as if she's trying to make up for being white. But she means well. I can do without some of the other girls who stare at me, though. I know they're just looking for something to talk about, so I rip off my sunglasses, let them get a better look. Might as well stare all you want. This is the first and last time you'll ever see me like this. Of course, that's what they all say. Nobody knows that better than me. My sister's boyfriends have been beating on her for years. I made up my mind a long time ago. I'm not having none of that. Last night, I tried telling this to Johnny, who seems to be hard of hearing. He'd brought me home from a movie. He came in for a while, got comfortable since Mom was working overtime, and we had the apartment to ourselves. We locked lips for a few minutes. Next thing I know, he's fingering my shirt buttons. I push him away, gently at first. "I think we better slow down," I say. "No, no," he says, voice all husky. "It's just getting good." This time, his hand shoots up my skirt. Bad move. I jump off the sofa like it's on fire. "Maybe it's time for you to go." He grabbed my skirt and tried pulling me back down, which is right about when I hauled off and smacked him. He leaped up and smacked me back. My jaw dropped from the shock, and I look in his eyes, and I saw my sister's reflection. I turned away, strode to the door, unlocked it, and held it open for him. "I hope you enjoyed yourself," I said, "because that's the last time you'll ever lay a hand on me. Now get out." He actually looked like he was studying on staying. So I stepped out into the hall and screamed at the top of my lungs, "I said get out!" Fearing trouble, he left. Now I've got this ugly tattoo on my cheek. I thought about skipping school today, but I hate to miss English. Besides, the bruise is temporary, and so's the pain. Still, I'd rather not have kids gawking at me all period. So I park myself in the back of the room and wait for Mr. Ward to call our English class to attention. Mr. Ward's funny. Sometimes he asks us a question with no warning and tells us to answer quick without stopping to think about it. "The truth is always right on the tip of your tongue," he says. "It's the fabrications that take a lot of time." Yesterday he asked us, "What do you know?" Yesterday I said my name. But today would be different. Today I'd tell him a woman ain't no punching bag. That's what I know. And so I like Shankara because she's definitely a tough girl, and she has a lot of reason for that. But part of this is she has a support system of friends that clearly seem to really care about her and want the best for her. They're there for her for whatever. But then she has, as weird as it sounds, she has a role model in her life in her sister, and she's not learning like I want to be like my sister like we think of a typical role model, but she sees what her sister's done and she says, "I don't want that to be me. I want to be different than that. I'm not going to allow that to happen to me," because her sister seems to have had a series of boyfriends who are very abusive, and her sister allows it to happen. And so Shankara goes on this date, and to quote a program you guys all use, that draw the line, respect the line. She has drawn the line. She has said she's had enough. Like they're making out, and she says that's as far as this is going to go. And the guy is insisting on going farther, and she keeps saying no. And it ends up in a fight where she slaps him and he hits her back. And then the line says she looked in his eyes and saw her sister's reflection. And that doesn't mean her sister's literally in the room with her. You know, you can see somebody's reflection in and like an eyeball, kind of like looking in water. But what she's saying is, I'm turning into my sister if I allow this to happen. If I let him hit me and I forgive him and I move on, then I'm just like my sister. And so she kicks him out. And then she wants to go just for English class the next day. And she talks about this. It sounds like a warm up game that her teacher does, or like a just a brain exercise where he'll ask her a question, ask anyone a question, and you have to answer immediately. And the idea behind that, it says fabrications take time. Is that if I ask you a question and you have to lie about it, it's going to take you a second to come up with a lie. Even if you do it pretty fast, it's going to take a few seconds because you have to think of something. And she says, but if you tell the truth, it should be able to pop out instantly. And so he likes to see just exactly what they're thinking. And he asks her, what do you know? And she says, well, yesterday I said my name because that's something I know. But now I know women ain't a punching bag either. So she's gaining this confidence. So now we're going to read her poem called Bruised Love. A midnight thirst sent me padding to the kitchen for a jelly jar of water and an accidental run-in with my sister. She tiptoed in, late and limping, her cheek raw as red-brown meat. I caught a quick glance in the chilly glow of the refrigerator before she had a chance to hide the latest souvenir her boyfriend gave her. I bruise easily, is one of the lies she sprinkles like sugar. But I'm 15, not brainless. Besides, I knew the truth at 10. He'll never do it again, she swears, but he will, because she'll let him. Now me, I've got no use for lame excuses or imitation love that packs a punch. So again, you'll notice a common thing throughout this whole book is the use of figurative language to really paint a picture. And so, she describes the way her sister's cheek looks as red brown meat. So think of like hamburger meat that's only partially cooked. It's not red, it's not all brown, it's kind of somewhere in between, and that's what her cheek looks like from being hit. And she calls it a souvenir, which think about it. When do you usually buy souvenirs or get souvenirs? When you go someplace that you want to remember, or you do something that you want to remember, as like a keepsake. And so she's saying, yeah, you see that bruise on your cheek? That's what you get to remember from your date with your boyfriend. That's what he gave you. But the sister keeps making up these excuses, saying, oh, I bruise easily. He didn't really hit me that hard. I just get bruised very easily. And she's saying, you sprinkle that like sugar, like you're trying to make it sound sweet, but he never should have hit you in the first place. Like, I've known that since I was 10. It doesn't take a genius to figure that out, is what she's telling her sister. And then at the end, she ends with, I've got no use for lame excuses or imitation love that packs a punch. And if you don't know the word imitation, you could probably figure it out from context clues here, but it means like copycat or fake. And so she says, real love doesn't punch you. It's people that claim to love you that hit you, but they don't really love you. So as you're about to see, this is the first time we're going to see this. Tyrone speaks a lot throughout this book, but it's not always him saying what's going on in his life and then a poem like the other characters. He is a character in this room who's experiencing these poems with the rest of the class. He's hearing Open Mic Friday for the first time, just like you and I are. And so he, after each poem, he typically has just sometimes one paragraph, sometimes a couple sentences or a page where he responds with what he's thinking about from their poem, or what he's learned about that character from that poem, because they're all unveiling their true identity and things he didn't know. So this is Tyrone's response. My pops used to hit my moms like that. When I was little, I used to hide under my bed and cry, scared he was coming for me next. Damn, I hadn't thought about that in years. How could you do that, Pops? I don't get it. Is that why he hung around? So he'd have somebody smaller than him to beat up on? I don't even want to go there. I'm just glad he finally stopped drinking and cleaned up his act before he checked out. It gave us a chance to have some good times together. Shankara was the third one up today. Her stuff was so deep, nobody wanted to follow her. There weren't but two more people planning to read anyway, including me. We both decided to bag it till next open mic. Meanwhile, I'm going to be busy writing me a rap about dudes beating on women. I'll call it Little Men, because that's what they are. Now we're going to hear Raul Ramirez. Lunch is a memory of indigestion. Shankara sat across from me in the cafeteria and I couldn't help staring at her. Her bruises are almost gone, but I can still see the shadows they left behind. If she was my Hermanita, I'd squash the cockroach who messed her up like that. That's what I was thinking when I remembered it ain't nice to stare. So I ate too fast and got out of there before she could catch me. Only 20 minutes till class starts, and Mr. Ward don't like it if I leave a mess on his desk. So that's 18 minutes to paint, plus 2 more for cleaning up and washing the paintbrushes. If Reynard gets here early, he'll help. He always does. I don't know why. Tyrone's another story. He checks in early lots of times when I'm here, but he keeps his distance, usually. Once he came up behind me and watched over my shoulder while I worked. Made me kind of nervous, if you must know. The Ricans and the brothers don't always hit it off. Anyway, he stood there for the longest time, then he grunted and said, "You good, man, I'll give you that." "Thanks," I said. And so already we're learning about Raul. He is an artist, and so he likes to eat lunch really fast and spend some time during the day pursuing his passion, artwork. Presumably, it helps him relax or kind of feel comfortable at school. And so when Mr. Ward's out of the room for his lunch break, says, "Okay, Raul, you can come sit at my desk. You can paint during lunch as long as you promise to have it cleaned up and looking good by the time class starts." And so that's what he does. We also know that Raul is Puerto Rican. That's what the Ricans means. He's talking about Puerto Ricans. And so he says the Ricans and the brothers don't always hit it off. So you can see, as I talked about with the notes, that there is that racial tension, that the Hispanic and the Puerto Rican students and the African American students typically don't get along. So he talks about how he likes going in there to paint, but sometimes he feels very uncomfortable when Tyrone comes in and just stands there and watches him. "You wasting your time, though. You know you ain't gonna make no money doing this." "Maybe, maybe not," I said, "but some things ain't about money." "You trippin', man," said Tyrone. "Money is the alpha and omega. Ask anybody." I just shrugged and gave him my no hablo inglés look, because I didn't get what he was talking about. It was the quickest way to end the conversation. People just don't get it. Even if I never make a dime, which, by the way, ain't gonna happen, I'd still have to paint. Don't get me wrong, money is useful. I'm lucky Mr. Ward leaves brushes and watercolor paper for me to use, though I ain't gonna tell him that. It's none of his business I can't afford fancy brushes and watercolor paper at home. Anyway, it's good for him to help out the future Diego Rivera. He knows I'm the real deal. Didn't he come to me for advice on how to decorate the classroom? The paper frames were my idea. Good work belongs in a gallery, I told him, especially if it's mine. I never thought about writing poetry before, but Mr. Ward said he's going to start videotaping our Friday sessions. Guess who's going to be the first one in front of the camera? Of course, that means I have to write a poem, so I better get busy. Even if it's hard, I'll do it. I don't mind working hard, whatever it takes, entiendes? Raul Ramirez, painter poet. Yeah, I like the sound of that. Someday I'll have a poetry reading in a one-man show at the Neo Rican Poets Cafe on the Lower East Side. I'll hand out tokens to all my friends so they got no excuse not to take the ride downtown, okay? My brothers laugh at me just 'cause they've been in the world a little longer. They say I'm loco en la cabeza. Ain't no spick gonna be no big-time artist in America. First off, I tell them, I ain't no spick. And second, watch me. All right, so we're going to stop right there because there's some stuff to discuss there. So he talks about his dreams of painting, and he doesn't care if he makes a lot of money, but he's pretty sure he's going to anyway because he's going to be famous. But the way his brothers treat him is they also speak down on him as far as kind of race, even though they're the same race. So they tell him he's crazy in the head, and then they say that no spick is going to be no, or ain't no spick going to be no big time artist. And a lot of people always say, "Miss Bennett, what's a spick?" So I'm going to explain it as a teaching moment. So spick is a racial slur. It is a term that should not be used, but it's kind of short for like Hispanic, and it means somebody from like Latin countries in Central America, South America, Caribbean area. But it is a derogatory term. It is meant to offend. It is meant to be hate speech. And so that's what his brothers are doing. They not only call him this name, but they tell him he's not going to be anything. So they're disrespecting him based on that. And so he's saying, don't disrespect me. Watch what I can do. Abuelita says my talent is as old as her bones. She says I get it, and my stubbornness, from her father. He never did nothing with his talent, though. I asked her why not. Porque la familia could not eat paint, she said. So I will be the first painter in the family. That's fine with me. I've been drawing pictures all my life. I used to make my sister model for me. I'd bribe her with whatever I could scrounge up from returning soda bottles to the grocery. Eventually, I got tired of digging through trash for bottles, and she got bored modeling. Now it's easier. My girlfriend sits for me. Every painter needs a model, right? Anyway, she knows if she's nice to me, one day I'll make her famous. Even if she's not nice, I'll probably paint her because she's beautiful. I want to show the beauty of our people, that we are not all banditos like they show on TV, munching cutritos and sipping beer through chipped teeth. I will paint Los Niños scooping up laughter in the sunshine and splashing in the temporary pool of a fire hydrant. I will paint my cousins turning the sidewalk into a dance floor when salsa or la bamba spills from the third floor window. I will paint mommy standing at the ironing board in the late evening after a day of piecework in the factory, sweat pouring off her, steam rising from a pot in the background, me tugging at her skirt while she irons. I will paint the way she used to smile down at me, the love in her eyes saying, I only do this for you. Mommy's beauty is better than a movie star. It survives a kind of life where pamper is a noun, not a verb. I will capture that beauty on canvas someday, when I'm good enough. For now, I draw my sketchbook and paint portraits of myself for practice. It's not so bad. I'm handsome after all. And so he has a lot of people looking down on him because of his race and his culture, but he has pride in it. And he wants to show that to the world. He wants to change the viewpoints that people have about Hispanics in America. And so he talks about all the time when you see a Hispanic person in America, they're portrayed on TV as like criminals or lazy people sitting around drinking beer. And he's like, that's not who we are. I don't know why we're always portrayed that way. And he said, so when I paint pictures, I want to show Los Niños, like the kids, just scooping up laughter and playing outside and having fun. And I want to show my cousins that when they're on the sidewalk and like music's coming out of an apartment window, they all just stop what they're doing and start dancing and laughing. And he's like, or my mother standing at an ironing board after working all day in the factory. She comes home, she starts dinner because there's steam coming from the pot in the background. She's standing at the ironing board working and she's got sweat pouring off of her and she hasn't stopped. And he says, and she always looks at me and is like, I do this for you. You're the only reason I continue to work this hard. And he talks about how beautiful that is, not necessarily in appearance wise, but just the love that she has, how beautiful it is. And I like where he says, pamper is a noun, not a verb. So in our parts of speech, we know a noun is a person, place, or thing, and a verb is an action. And so typically when we hear the word pamper, you say you're going to pamper somebody. It's a verb. You're going to take special care of somebody. And he says, but not for my mom. Pamper is not a verb. It's not something she does. It's who she is. That's what he means by it's a noun. It is the very core of her being. And he says, someday I want to show people how beautiful she is, but I'm not that good a painter yet. So now we have his open mic poem, and I really like this one on the page because it's in the shape of a Z, so he uses that visual interpretation as well. And it's called Zorro. If you don't know what Zorro is or who he is, he's like a comic action hero from uh, way back in the day, but he is a Hispanic action hero who wore like the mask over his eyes and a hat and a cape, and he would rush in to save the day. And when he did, he would take out his sword and like carve an X, like do a real quick X on anything. I mean, not an X, I'm sorry, a Z. And so that's why this poem's in the shape of a Z. Call me Zorro, I'll swash and buckle while the cameras roll, capes swinging in the breeze, teeth showing as expected. I'd lunge on cue, save the damsel in distress. I understand my role. I've studied all those scripts and comic books. I used to pose for close-ups, knew how to dutifully disappear when the script said fade to black. Then I'd wait uncomfortably between the lines of my own story till someone with skin like milk yelled, "Action!" But I'm done. I'm too old for comic heroes. It's time to lose the cape, step off the page. Except, I think I'll keep the mask. Why make it easy for you to choose whether I am Zorro or El Bandito when I am neither? Your categories are too confining. The fact is, you're more comfortable with myth than man. But I am here to help. First off, put down your camera. Second, give me your hand. So he again uses figurative language, and he's talking about how he's always portrayed as Zorro or El Bandito because he's the Hispanic student. He has to fit into one of those categories. That's what people expect. And he's kind of comparing life to being on the stage, that there's a director with skin like milk yelling action. Like he's trying to say the white students or the white people of the school kind of have the upper hand. They direct everything. And then he's already talked about this racial tension. And admittedly, there would be, as you'll see, far more African American students in his class. So he says he knows when he's allowed to be center stage and when the script says fade to black, like fall in the background and allow others to be in charge. And he says, but now I need you to put down your camera and look at the real me. So this is Tyrone's response to that, which is very ironic because Raul's entire story and poem was about breaking down stereotypes and judgments of Hispanics. So pay attention to what Tyrone says. Raul is on the money. You got to make your own rules, Jack. That's the real 411. Forget who white folks think you are, because they ain't got a clue. That's some strong stuff Raul be writing. That Z thing was cool, too. He was working it. Frankly, I didn't know Raul had it in him. Matter of fact, I didn't know he knew that much English.